Hello, and welcome to the Purposeful Powerhouse podcast. And I am so excited because today I have my first human guest on the show. What?
Yay.
Yay, I know.
I feel
And
so honored that I'm your first.
I know. You're my first human guest because I say that because I have guests on the show periodically that squawk and cluck in the background, and you've probably heard them if you've been listening to the episodes. You know a little bit about Chirpy and Friends, my accidental pet rooster that I once adopted, and he still lives in the backyard and he brings friends with him every time he comes over. So that is happening in the background of many of the episodes. But today I get to have a real life conversation with my friend Renae, and we are going to talk about your superpower. Yeah, you have a lot of them, but as a woman, you have one in particular that you maybe haven't been tapping into yet. But after this episode, let me tell you, you're going to be all about it. So, hi, welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
Me too. I am so glad to be here and I'm so excited to have fun with you. And I'm sure, I used to have chickens. You probably could have conversations with them too, but they might not have quite the greatest advice.
Right? Yeah, their answers are a bit elusive.
I will say, when we had our chickens, my son was like maybe 2.5. And so I have these pictures and videos of him running around, like toddling in our backyard, like trying to pick the chickens up and like holding them with like strangling them. And they're so cute. They make me like, so if chickens have this fondness, they make me remember that season of my life when my little ones were so cute.
Aw, I love that image that he was like struggle cuddling them.
Yes.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that little moment with us. And that's what we're going to actually kick off because people can read all about your amazing bio in the show notes. I want to give them a chance to really get to know you. And I would love to know, has there been a moment in time that really helped you to recognize that some of the tools that you have been using and that you get to share are actually in fact part of your life's purpose and part of the work that you do that really inspired you to move in that direction? Can you
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about that time?
Yeah. So, well, about that season when my middle one was about that 2-year-old time was when my husband was diagnosed with a brain tumor. And so we went through this whirlwind of a year of me having him not being able to drive, having surgery, then having seizures. And it was just a lot on the top of the fact that I ended up getting pregnant with my third and having her in that same year. And there was just so much that made me realize like we only live this life once. And if we only live our life once and we're never guaranteed tomorrow, because we never really are, what are we doing today to actually make today the life that we want? And how can we show up today and create that dream life that we really want? And so that's what led me into network marketing, trying to create this dream, trying to create this vision, trying to create freedom, financial freedom, time freedom, all the things we want, right? And found that network marketing and building your own business was a whole heck of a lot of hustle. Like there was so much that I was doing. And I can remember at the time I was working at the children's hospital and I'd be pumping on my lunch breaks so I'd be pumping and eating and messaging and trying to work my business at the same time. And it was like squeezing in business into every nook and cranny of my life. That first year or two, oh my gosh, my taxes were I don't know if we can cuss, but
Sure, go ahead.
a shit show, right? Like my taxes were awful. I got to the end of the year and I was like, gosh, I have not tracked a single expense. I haven't tracked a
Right.
single thing. Like, what have I been doing? And it was all because I was so focused on my goal. I was so focused on building my business that I neglected everything else. Like
Mm.
everything else became insignificant if it wasn't helping move my business forward. And it was like nose to the ground, let's do this. And 2 years in, I was like, this is not working. Like,
Mm.
this is not working. I'm not hitting my goals. I'm not getting to where I want to go. And in fact, building this dream is making me feel worse. Like, I'm not getting where I want to go. And I've been at this for 2 years. And I reached out to my mentor in the network marketing space at that time. And she's like, it's all a numbers game. You just have to do more. And I was like, I can't. Like, I can't do more. I'm bleeding at my knuckles. Like, there's nothing
Mhm.
in me. I've neglected my taxes. I've neglected my kids. Like I've neglected everything to try to make this work and it's not working. So in that season, I invested in a mastermind and in a new coach. And she, in that mastermind, was where she had a guest speaker come in and share about how women are different and how women don't operate in the same way as men when it comes to time and our energy and productivity and all these types of things. And it was kind of that light bulb moment of like, oh, there is a different way that we can do this. And there's a different way. And so I started to kind of integrate it into my life, started to just kind of pay attention and notice those days when I would feel really moody and triggered and like angry at my husband and throwing a shoe at him because I'm just so mad and so angry. And then days later being like, what the heck got into me? Like, why did I do that?
Yeah.
And starting to notice these trends, and then eventually started to really start to implement them into my business, into how I was structuring my days, into how I was structuring my months. And then now I get to help other women do that in their own businesses too. And really just redefining the way women work and redefining how we look at productivity and seeing it from a different lens. Like women are just different and we operate differently. And so when we use that as a strength rather than seeing it as a weakness, it really does become our superpower.
Oh,
Yeah.
amazing. I love that. I love that. And that's really the intention of this show, is giving you the tools to live on purpose. And as women, we have this completely different flux and flow with our
Mhm.
energy and our mood and all of that. And so I love that you are sharing these tools with us today. And so let's dive a little bit deeper into that, because yes, women are amazing and we are wonderful. And the more
Yeah.
that we can tap into that inner wisdom, which is what living intuitively and intentionally is all about, then the more things feel that like ease and grace and fun and play. And
Mhm.
so can you tell us a little bit more about that, one of that core differences in the way a woman's cycle flows versus a male's? Because
Mhm.
sometimes when you told me that, I was a little bit blown on that, because I was like, I hadn't even realized that they would have that sort of fluctuation like we do. So let's start with that.
Yeah. So men's primary hormone is testosterone, and that starts generally pretty high in the morning and then has these up and down wave like patterns throughout the day, generally on a descent. And then they get to the end of the day and they are tired. Maybe you have a partner that comes in and sits on the toilet for an hour and a half when he gets home from work and he's playing on his phone on the toilet. And you're like, what the heck? Well, that's him. Like he's reached his low. He's recuperating a little bit before he comes back in and deals with the rest of the life at the evenings. But they will go to sleep in the evening. They'll wake up in the morning, generally with a replenished store and stock of testosterone. Versus women, we have estrogen that is really more of our active hormone in the first half of the month, and then progesterone is more active in the second half of the month. And the way estrogen and progesterone feel on us feel very different. So estrogen has that really high energy, feels good, you feel on top of the world, very productive, like clear, brain focused. Whereas progesterone comes in and it's like, let's slow it down. I am a little bit more full of doubt and fear. Like, don't make me get dressed. Like, that's where I was this morning, to be totally honest. I was like, man, if I didn't have a couple of trainings today, I would definitely not be getting dressed today. But like, so when we look at where women are from like day 1 to day 7 to day 14 to day 21, like throughout the whole month, where those estrogen and progesterone levels are depend or impacts the way we feel. So you might feel like on day, 14, you're on high on life, like feeling great in your business, great with your family, great with your spouse, like you feel connected, you feel full of purpose, you feel wonderful, like you could tackle everything. And then a week later, that's not there anymore. And so it becomes this feeling like so many women are like, why? What's wrong with me? I was doing so good. How come I can't keep up the momentum? I'm not consistent enough. Like, if I could just get better at my habits, then I'd be able to do it. Right. And we are hearing this tout of like consistency, like consistency in the habits. And for men, consistency day to day to day really works. Like, it's helpful because that testosterone, it's on this 24-hour cycle. But for women, we're on this 28-day cycle. So your day 7 to 14 looks very different. And so we need to acknowledge that those 2 days look very different and how we show up looks different so we can accommodate and adjust for that.
That's so huge. And because before I learned this from you, and PS, I just did an amazing training with her that I know she'll be running again. So keep your eyes open for that, because there's so much depth to this, as you can tell, right? As humans, we are so intricate. So what I really started to recognize was, there's been so many times when I was upset and frustrated with myself of like, why can't I do this? I should be able to do this. I was so excited. Now what's the matter? And
Mhm.
recognizing, as you're saying, that there are these different phases throughout the month, and that's going to affect how you feel, how you show up, what you're feeling inclined to want to do. And one thing that you shared, and you shared now, is that at that mid-month period, when we are in that state of ovulation, we're like, yes, on top of the
Mhm.
world, I'm feeling so good, and we are magnetic, and that's
Yes.
biological.
Yep.
And that's, can maybe explain that a little bit about how and why that's showing up, and you're so radiant and magnetic, and hello, it makes so much sense, but I didn't even realize it till you said it the other day.
Yeah. So, well, you think about it. So there's 4 phases of our cycle. The biological terms of them is menstrual phase, the follicular phase, your ovulation, and then luteal phase. If you're in my world, we like to call them different names just because
Yeah.
we're so much more about the productivity and how they're really playing out in our lives. So we have the first half, or the first phase is the recharge phase. That's your menstrual
Mhm.
phase. That's when you're bleeding. That's when your energy is at the lowest. Like biologically, when you're losing blood, you're losing a lot of iron. And iron is one of those parts of our body that really makes us feel like we have energy. So it's like actively losing blood, you're going to feel a little bit more drained, right? You're going to feel a little bit down. You're going to feel a little bit more exhausted. So that's that phase. It's really great. Like the whole focus is on recharging. How do you need to recharge? Like, we need to make sure that your gas is full, your tank is full, everything in you feels good, you're feeling aligned, you're feeling centered, you're feeling grounded, because as soon as you leave that recharge phase is when you hit the acceleration phase. So that's when estrogen is picking up. That's your follicular phase. So you're like, okay, I'm back. Like, I'm back in the world. Like, I just got off this recharge, just got off this rest. Like, here we go. Let's get things going. Like, let's get
Mhm.
the action going. And you start really feeling that way. It's a great time to like big projects, check off the to-do list, like be uber productive, all of those types of things. And then as that estrogen peaks is when your body's ovulating. So
Mhm.
as you're ovulating, you think of like those, like a peacock. Well, I was just all of a sudden the peacock popped in my mind, like the male peacock has his big old feathers and he like fluffs them up and he's like trying to attract his mate. In this sense, it's us as women.
Yeah.
Our bodies are biologically saying, mate with me, like make a baby. And so when we look at it from a very like biological sort of level,
It totally makes sense.
it makes sense, right? Like our bodies are like, we're glowing, our skin is glowing, we feel the most confident. Like if you've ever gone shopping for a new clothes or something like that, and you've been in the dressing room and you're like, wow, I look kind of good. Like everything looks good. And then a couple weeks later, you go in, you're like, oh, like even today, like I'm in my reflect phase. So we're getting on the camera. I'm like, gosh, how can I get my hair to pump up a little bit? Like everything feels like it's dragging. My skin feels a little shiny. Like just you feel and look different. But in that
Mm.
in that ovulation phase, which is connect phase, it's all about people. It's all about connection, right? You're the most not intimate. Well, yeah, you can be intimate, but you're the most like desiring that intimacy with other people or that connection with other people. And so your body and your brain and everything's driving you towards that in that way. So if you're an introvert, these 2 phases are your best time to do any of those like people things, because you're going to
Mhm.
have the most alignment for that. And then once that estrogen dips off after that ovulation, then the progesterone kicks up, and progesterone is that hormone that's kind of like pregnancy nesting. You think like you're like trying to get super organized and get things ready for the baby, and so you're like washing everything, putting everything away, cleaning the refrigerator. Like if you've had one of those days where you come in where you're like, do you try to put the groceries away, but all of a sudden you like clean out the entire refrigerator to put the groceries away?
I do
That
that.
like oftentimes, or like you're like, I got to clean out my entire closet. Like I'm going to declutter this whole area and this whole space. That's
Right.
oftentimes this phase, because it's very detailed, very organizational. Like let's declutter everything. It can be very productive, but you don't necessarily like want to be around people. You want to be in your own little cocoon. You might want to stay in your pajamas or your yoga pants all day. You might
Hey,
want to
I wear yoga pants all day, every day.
There you go. But like, you know
Other
what I mean?
times I
Like,
want to put on other pants.
yeah. Well, so that accelerate and connect phase, that would be your phase. You're like, I'm actually going to wear an outfit today and
Right?
I'm going to look good. I'm going to spice myself up today. So it really just like it shifts throughout the month, and it impacts, like, these hormones definitely impact the way we sleep. They impact the way we eat. They impact our relationships. They impact how we communicate. They impact our glow. They impact literally every part of us. And yet for most of us, we've never been taught about it. We have no idea. We're just trying to fit in with how the 24-hour clock has kind of taught us to run and how to be productive on that clock. And we're just different.
Thank goodness.
Yeah.
I'm glad we are. Well, and I love that you're sharing this, and I can see how the different phases really impact how we show up, how we feel, what we're feeling inclined and want to do, and the way we show up. And especially as business owners and many people having that forward facing presence, whether that's online or brick and mortar, really knowing that you can maximize these times and periods for yourself. Like when you're in that peacock mode, take advantage of it. Like that's when you want to show up and maybe film some extra reels because you're like, yeah, I'm feeling good. Let's do this. Right. And you're in that magnetic space. So to help people understand this a little bit more, you already gave some really good tips as far as starting to recognize these different ebbs and flows for ourselves. But what's something that we can start to do to bring more awareness to these different phases for ourselves?
Yeah. Well, number one is just going to be start tracking it, because most women are not. I'm actually been surprised at how many women are like, I kind of know when my period comes, like, but they're not actively tracking it. So that would be the number one. I would start tracking that. The other piece that I would really encourage you to start tracking would be your ovulation, because even if you are going month to month to month, oftentimes if like women may not actually be even ovulating, or there may be something else going on. And so paying mindful of where those two pieces are is going to give you really good insight into actually what's happening in your body, allow you to be a better advocate when you go to the doctor's office and you're like, hey, I'm not actually ovulating, right? Because every woman should be ovulating every month. If you're in that childbearing age years, like you should be ovulating. And if you're not, there's something off with your hormones. And like, we want to make sure that we kind of adjust for that. But we definitely, when you know those two pieces, then we can plan and structure out the rest. We know where we're going to be. Like if you ovulate late, you ovulate early, all those types of things, you're going to be able to adjust on your calendar when we're looking at productivity or where we're planning things or where things are going to show up, right? And like if we are just looking at the period, we're kind of blind the rest of the month. So I would recommend those two pieces, and then start tracking and start noticing some of the other ways you feel, right? Like I've had clients do this and they're like, man, on day 5, every single month, I am like this. Or on day 7, every single month, I'm like, I can't believe how much energy I have. And it's like, I'm back and I'm ready to go or whatever. And so you want to start noticing what those trends are for you. And so that you can really leverage on what those things specifically are for you.
That makes a lot of sense. And so that's really applicable to somebody that still is cycling or has a somewhat or rather consistent cycle. What about people that are either past that phase in their life or are using birth control or maybe pregnant, or is there ways that they can use this information?
Yeah. So, well, one, I think overall, just as women, we're cyclical. Like, I think as
Mhm.
human beings, we're cyclical. It's just a matter of tapping into what that cycle looks like, right? We've got the moon has its own cycle, which is a 28-day cycle, like just like women. And
Mhm.
we have the sun has its own cycle, which is a 24-hour rhythm, just like men. Like we've got
Brilliant.
seasons. Yes. Seasons throughout the year, right? We've got spring, summer, winter, fall. Like there's so many rhythms. Like our heart has rhythm and our lungs have rhythm. Like so much of us has this rhythm that even if it's not the hormones of a menstrual cycle that you're following, when you tap into a rhythm and you create this cycle in your body, one, it helps normalize cycles for many women, right? So if your cycle's really irregular, and you're forcing it to live into a 24-hour rhythm, it's trying to adapt. Your body's trying to get there. So things get irregular. You know, when we're stressing our bodies, when we're doing these things that is out of its normal alignment, it's sending up cortisol. Cortisol is going to shut down the other fertility hormones. It's going to shut down a lot of things. And so it can contribute to irregular cycles. And then also when you're postmenopausal, when you're post-pregnancy, all those types of things, the clients that I've worked with that have used the moon to follow along with that same cycle have found that they generally feel like their body starts to adapt to that. Their body starts to feel those same rhythms as if they were like they were benefiting from the hormones, but it's not the hormones. It's like their body just normally functions better that way. And I think as human beings, we have so many women that are feeling burnt out. They're feeling overwhelmed. They're feeling exhausted. They're feeling unfulfilled. They're feeling like there's something in their life that's lacking. And oftentimes it's because we're missing one of the core components of one of these phases. And each one of the phases allows us to feel like we're whole as a human being. So, you know, your recharge phase gives you the core need of being able to rest. Your accelerate phase gives you the need to be able to put purpose out in the world and like make a contribution and an impact. The core need in the connect phase is the relationship with other people. And then that final one, the reflect phase, is your core need for connection to yourself. And I think those are like core needs. Like if we meet all four of those things, like we generally feel pretty balanced and we feel pretty full and we feel content with life. And so when we operate in that cycle, making sure that each one of those needs gets met, we just feel better overall.
And we're so tapped in and being able to nourish and take care of ourselves in a nurturing way because we are following those natural cycles, helping to come back to that beautiful rhythm within yourself and learning to practice like the ultimate level of self-care if you're nurturing at that core need level. I mean, how brilliant is that? And how amazingly aligned with the natural cycles of the sun and the moon are just, I told you this stuff was really cool, everybody. I told you.
Well,
See?
and I think it's one of those things like we are nature, right? Like we are part of nature. And when we start to look at how well we integrate with nature is when we start to feel wholeness. And when we detach from nature and we get into the technology and we get into the modernization is when we start to feel disconnected and we feel a loss. And I think this, all it does is help connect us back to that nature part of us. But that could be a whole nother conversation.
Right? But it's so beautiful, and talk about the most intuitive way to go back to that and really connecting to ourselves and thereby connecting to those other beautiful rhythms. So I love that. And so if somebody's interested in learning more, what can a next step be for them to connect in with you and get some more tools?
Yeah. Well, I would say, like I said, tracking is one of the big things. So I do have a free tracker. If you want to do a paper tracker, which I highly recommend when you're first starting out, because then you can kind of see it month to month to month. You can kind of see those patterns. And then it also, with the tracker comes like the 3 ways your cycle is impacting your life and business that you really want to pay attention to. So you can get that at renaefieck.com/cyclesyncbiz. And that will give you all of that access. I do have the Cycle Advantage podcast, which is a great place to get resources and tools. And then I like to hang out on Instagram and TikTok, both at just my first and last name. So
Awesome.
yeah.
Beautiful. Well, all of that will be in the show notes. So make sure to go ahead and grab that, especially grab the tracker because that's such a powerful resource. And then as you're watching this or listening, make sure to take a screenshot and tag us both and share your takeaways because I really do hope that you got some incredible insights because there was so much goodness in there. So thank you so much for being here today, Renae, and for sharing your magic with us.
Thank you so much for inviting me to be here.
You're welcome. So the last question that we ask everybody is, what does being a purposeful powerhouse mean to you?
I think the first thing that comes to mind is really aligned, like living in alignment with your purpose, like what you're destined to make the impact that you're here for. So I think oftentimes we undervalue and kind of see ourselves in a small box of what we're here and like we're just this little human being on the planet Earth. But in reality, like you were here to create impact in whatever capacity that looks like, whether it's just in your family, if it's in your larger community, or if it's worldwide. We are here to make an impact, and leaning into that is really what fuels us. It's what makes us powerful. So yeah.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Thank you so much. That's a beautiful answer. And I'm so grateful that you are making an impact by sharing these beautiful
Thank you.
tools with your community, but also with us today. And so thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you, everybody that is watching and listening to this amazing episode. So grateful for you. Thank you for taking the time to learn a little bit more about yourself and your cycle so that you too can show up and live as the purposeful powerhouse version of yourself. So until next time, take good care. Thank you, everybody. And we'll see you soon. Hey, perfect. Good job
Thank
on the
you.
circle there.
This is what my kids do. It's a silent applause at school. So like when they have
Oh,
assemblies, they don't want all the kids being all noisy and loud and crazy. So they all do this little like it's just their silent applause during assemblies. Mhm.
I love it. I call it the Peacock Sparkle Wave. So we're all on the same page. And if you are just listening and you have no idea what we're talking about, we just have our hands up and we're wiggling our fingers. Okay. So just use your imagination. Or follow
Perfect.
me on Instagram because I do it all the time. And definitely follow Renae while you're over there. So until next time, everybody, take good care. And thank you again for being part of this incredible community. Have a beautiful rest of your day. Ta-ta for now. Bye-bye.
Bye.